Mic check. All right, this thing's on, right?
Yes.
All right, well, hey guys, thank you very much for having me today. Like you said, my name's Ron Johns, ran for Toledo City Council. I was a chapter president for Young Americans for Liberty, and been an active blogger. I've been interested in politics for all my life, but thank God I haven't been into it my whole life. You see, I used to be an Obama liberal, like the rest. It wasn't until 2011 I heard Ron Paul speak on YouTube. I said, that guy's got it. You know, we all learn things every single day. Let me tell you, just the other day, I tried to put the government as a dependent. Apparently they don't like that. You know, it really is strange. They listen to my phone calls, they monitor my Facebook, they take half my money. I thought they'd let me put them down at least as my wife. All right, that's just a joke, but one thing none of us have to learn, however, is the wanting to keep the own fruits of our labor. You know, I teach Sunday school, and when I teach these kids, they know that if they do something good, they memorize a verse, they win a game, they're going to get a piece of candy. I'm pretty conservative with it because I want to make sure that they know they earned it. It wasn't their right. But I've never had a kid come up to me and say, Mr. Ronnie, please come to, take half my candy. I didn't earn the whole thing. They're going to give it away to other kids, but you know what? They earned it, and they know that they should be able to do whatever they want with it. Now, over time, I don't think people lose this interest in wanting to keep their money. Think back to when you were a kid. For a lot of you, this will probably be about 20 years ago. And when you were a child, your parents probably gave you some sort of an allowance for your chores or something. You didn't get taxed on it. It was great. Maybe afterwards you started up a lemonade stand. Jimmy Carter at the time didn't find out about it, and he didn't make you pay any taxes. Now remember, your first real job, you were probably working minimum wage somewhere. You worked 20 or maybe even 30 hours in a week. You thought, I'm gonna make a lot of money this next week. But tragedy strikes. And by tragedy, I meant Medicare tax, Social Security tax, income tax. Those are the tragedies that are stealing our income. First time I got a check, I was already sick of taxes. Now, just like this longing to keep the fruits of our labor is not divided by age, I don't think it's divided by race either. But for far too long, we have just assumed it is. Look, talking to a Republican from Toledo does not count as minority outreach. Though we seem like it a lot. It's time we start reaching out to groups we never thought we'd have a chance with. When I was tabling for Young Americans for Liberty, and I can tell you, Nathan will probably tell you the same thing for Turning Point, Eric will probably tell you the same thing when he does tablings for Yale. I talk to everybody, because you never know till you ask. There's the same chance that Tyrone Jackson is a conservative as there is, let's say, Jake Miller. They may have different skin colors, and they might even consider themselves different political parties. But I can tell you, the shade of their political ideology may be the same exact color. Frankly, for far too long, we've just looked at the white community. And I can understand target marketing. You want to go for where your strengths are. But I think we've underestimated how big the target really is. There isn't only one people group sick of government oppression. Our target market is not bound by demographics, but rather psychographics. It's expanded. Anyone that doesn't want government in their lives whatsoever should be a Republican. In the Republican Party, we're not for a certain people group, rather we're for a certain person. And that certain person is the individual. Republicans are named so because of the form of government we push. We don't push willy-nilly democracy. And by this, I mean, there's some things that you can't vote on, that 51% of people cannot tell me what to do with. Number one, my freedom of speech. Number two, my freedom of association. Number three, my right to privacy. Number four, my right to a fair trial. And number five, my right to bear arms. And the list, it goes on and on. And you know what? Until the 16th Amendment in 1913, the right to my income was on there. In 1913, the highest tax was over at 7%. 5 years later, into 1918, it became 77%. That is 70% within 5 years. My pastor always says, Sin will take you farther than you want to go, keep you longer than you want to stay, and cost you more than you want to pay. Sounds a lot like the government, doesn't it? Look, the smallest minority is not a certain race, gender, or creed, but the individual itself. I'm just one person, and my vote doesn't count. That's what a lot of people will say. And you know what? Their vote does count, but it only counts once. Once in a million vote election. I'm not saying you shouldn't vote, but the opposite of voting is true when individuals get to do it for themselves. When I go out to eat with my friends, we don't all have a group election on what kind of pop we want to have. I decide what I want, or if I just want water. And you know what? As far as I know, you keep this right until you get married, then you give it to your wife. Right, guys? Sure, right? But in all reality, it is the value of individualism that sets us apart. In the end, the choice is not between Democrat or Republican, Hillary Clinton, or whichever Republican gets chosen. The simple choice is between individualism versus collectivism. Whether an individual is red, yellow, white, or black, it doesn't matter. Nobody wants someone taking their money that they use their valuable time to produce. And when you think of money just as a store of labor hours, then you can see when someone tells you how to spend your money, they're telling you how to use your time. Who here likes to be told how to use their time? That's pretty much what I expected. And no one else likes it. If I go to Detroit, Michigan, to Ottawa Hills, anywhere, and ask that question, I'm going to get the same response. No one wants to be told what to do. And that's what the Republican Party needs to capitalize on. For the longest time, we in the Republican Party and the conservative movement have been seen as racists, sexists, and everything else is. They will often compare us to the absolute filth that is happening 10 miles up the river. Now, I'm not talking about our government officials at one government center. I'm talking about the neo-Nazi rally that's happening right this moment. Republicans have, and they compare us this way, but let's actually look at the ideologies of the two groups. Republicans have long been against collectivist movements, and the Republican, libertarian-leaning economist Ayn Rand once pointed out, racism is the lowest and most crudely primitive form of collectivism. Not to mention, I'm sure you all know, but Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Then in the next presidency, Republicans in Congress had to overcome a veto threat to pass the 1866 Civil Rights Amendment. So let's look, what does Nazi really mean? Nazi means the National Socialist German Workers' Party. And neo-Nazis believe the same exact thing that Hitler and the Nazis believe. So let's see, what did Hitler believe in? Well, I'll tell you, Hitler believed in mandated gun control. So it's rather ironic the group that came today brought firearms. If they were consistent to their principles, they would have turned those into the government like Hitler demanded in 1938. Not saying they don't have a Second Amendment, but gotta stay consistent. Hitler restored religious liberties and used the power of the state to control the church. Churches in Nazi Germany were not allowed to speak out against the government unless they were saying what Hitler wanted them to say. Continuing on this, people that took principled stands for their religion were punished by the state. The most memorable being Dietrich Bonhoeffer, whose church was not just fined, but he was thrown in jail and executed on false charges. On economics, Hitler approved of a collectivist approach. They had the Nazi Nationalist Socialist program, which had 25 points. One of those points was nationalizing private companies and private land. Hitler even said once he didn't believe in private property. He thought he had a right to everything. Finally, Hitler and the Nazis arose to power in vehement opposition to communism with a foggy socialist answer. I don't really know the difference, but a Democratic friend of mine told me it's definitely there. See, today on April 18th, there are two different political events happening at the same time in Northwest Ohio, both with roots in the past and both representing a certain ideology. Today, we represent liberty and individualism. We represent every man, every woman, and every child looking to chase the American dream. Not just the ones that fit into our white, blue-eyed, blonde-haired collectivist group. See, I can trace my political heritage back to great Christian men like Jefferson, Washington, and Madison. And when I go to meet my maker, you know what? I'm sure I'll meet them as well. Fellows up the river trace their beliefs back to monsters like Hitler and Mussolini. And if they don't change their ways, I'm sure they'll be seeing their political heroes and their Lord as well. Only problem, it's going to be a whole lot hotter and a whole lot less Jesus, if you know what I mean. Now see this. This is the real fight. Individualists versus collectivists. The Republican Party has real value. But like John Adams said before me, we need to stand up and fight for the Republican Party. We're the only political party with a real chance to win the White House in 2016 that pushes not for collectivism, but for the individual. Ron Paul once said, freedom is popular. And oh baby, it is. But you know what? People need a choice of freedom. Barack Obama won in 2008 and 2012, pushing collectivist, nationalized ideas. Like a collectivist, nationalized healthcare system, known as Obamacare. A collectivist, nationalized education system, known as Common Core. Collectivist, nationalized warrantless searches with the NSA. A collectivist, nationalized internet, known as net neutrality, and like you guys know, a collectivist nationalized taxation system, named the IRS, which is used to hunt down and attack people financially that speak out against the government. Now we ask ourselves, how on the earth did we lose? But look who we put up. We didn't put someone up that represented our values, that wasn't constantly talking about individualism, freedom, and liberty. We put up something that was just more of the same. Democrat light. Now let me tell you, if you guys find any association between the National Socialist German Workers' Party and any major American political party, let me tell you, it's not my fault. If you want to blame someone, blame Democratic Chairman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She's the one that allowed the Democrats to follow Nazi Party economics, gun control, privacy rights, and religious rights. Let me also say, I told Eric not to speak about 2016, but gotta get this off my shoulder. If we elect another Democrat light in the primary, like Jeb Bush, we're gonna lose. The reason why Obama won with the huge disadvantage of terrible ideas. Nobody wants to give up their rights. Nobody wants to do it. The reason he won is because he sold his rights. He sold his ideas. We didn't sell our ideas. We just went against his. The last Republicans to sell the ideas of liberty were Ronald Reagan, and he won in 1980. Then was Newt Gingrich in 1994 with the Contract with America. And we won back Congress for the first time in 40 years. If us as Republicans and conservatives want to win back not just minorities, but the youth and lifelong Democrats, there's one choice that we have. We have to accept the individualistic Republican message that was first pushed in 1776 and then pushed again in 1976 when Ronald Reagan ran for the first time against Gerald Ford. We can no longer just be Democrat lights. It's time for us to go our own way. We want a we want a balanced budget, we want term limits, we want a government that will leave us the hell alone. Our Gerald Ford lost in 2012. It's time for our Ronald Reagan in 2016. We have great hope. Don't forget it. God bless, guys.
That's what young voices sound like. It sounds better than me, don't it?
Yeah.
No clapping, no clapping.
Give him your hat.
Yeah, but he needs to get a hat?
No, give him yours.